Welcome to the Yin and Yang Sisters podcast with Jean.
And Izzy. So today, sadly, is going to be the conclusion to our relationship segment. This is episode 3 of 3. As you guys remember from previous episodes, we're just here to give you guys a few different perspectives on different phases of a relationship. As you guys remember, I'm a nun for life.
And I am the happy wife. So today we're going to be talking about a universally challenging experience, the ending of a relationship where two people become strangers again. Not sure if everyone here understands the reference.
Yeah, shout out Wong Fu Productions, if you guys know.
If you know, you know,
Yes.
but we are going to be getting a little deeper and personal with this one. So let's get to it.
Okay. Um, so first thing that we're just going to talk about is how do you know when a relationship is over? I mean, obviously, both of us have shared or we've had our fair share of experiences with like breakups in the
Mm-hmm.
past.
Yeah.
Maybe me more so than you, but regardless, like it is, like you said, a universal experience that we
Mm-hmm.
all have to go through that's challenging. And it's crazy because some of us, I think, like the circumstances are all different, but we all kind of go through it the same. So
Right.
let's talk about how do we know that a relationship is over?
Oh, I feel like a solid answer is when like your lives are going different paths. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like you have different goals, and you just don't really like your guys' future doesn't really align or you can't see it aligning. I think that's like the biggest, I feel like, breakup reason.
yeah.
Um, but I also just feel like lack of interest is a big one, where it's like, not in the sense of like, oh, they're just busy, but in the sense of like you can definitely feel that drift in the relationship where it's like even if you were to have a talk about like even if you were to bring up like you feel a distance and there was no change, I guess, on the other person's end, and like um that distance still kind of lingered, then I think that's also kind of like a hint to disinterest in
Mhm.
fueling that relationship. Um, and then obviously like cheating, that's a big one.
Yeah,
That's a
because
big one.
obviously, yeah, it's like no interest enough that you would be willing to seek out interest in somebody else. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like maybe those two
Kind of
sort
go
of go
hand in
hand in
hand.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think also, like, a relationship is over when I feel like a relationship's over when you don't even recognize yourself and your role in that relationship.
That's a good one.
Like, like if you don't even know who you are outside of that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
like and inside of it, you just kind of get yourself lost. And I think that that's when you know that relationship is not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it should kind of be towards the end of that, or you should at least reevaluate that part of yourself. And if you just keep reevaluating and you can't come to terms with that, then I think that that's your cue to really make a change in your life. I also feel like I don't know if this is necessarily true to me, but when I think back on it now and my experience, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think your like mind and your body are very closely connected, right? And I feel
Yeah.
like if there's a lot going on in your mind, you're gonna experience like physical symptoms
Yeah,
that
for
something's
sure.
not right for you, right? So like
Yeah.
I just feel like you should sometimes like you should just listen to what your body is telling you
Mm-hmm.
when you're around this person. Like, are you are you always on alert? Like, are you always anxious, not at ease? You know, those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things. Ultimately, like that person should be your safe place. But if they're not making you feel that way, um, you know, at least like if they're making you feel that way, I think that's like normal sometimes in relationships, like to feel anxious or to feel a little bit jealous or to feel a little whatever, but you work through those things. But if you're consistently feeling like things are just not right physically between you and this other person, like
Yeah,
every time you're around them, you're uneasy, then that's a time to really think about, you know,
the
whether you need to move
status
on
of your
from this
guys's, yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, like you were saying, there's always going to be jealousy, there's always going to be anxiousness in relationships, but like you said, if you're constantly sitting there and you're feeling some type of way, like you need to listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Sometimes your gut is really signaling to you like, hey, some things you're not picking up
Something's
on. And
off. Yeah.
yeah, so it really can be the, the telling,
The
it could be
telltale sign for
yeah,
sure.
the telltale sign. So for sure, that's something to keep in mind when, you are in a relationship. If your gut is sitting there and it's telling you otherwise, you kind of need to sit there and reevaluate the situation, like you were saying.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. What are three reasons you would consider ending a relationship?
Yeah, I think this question goes really well with the last one
Mm-hmm.
because it's like what can we tell, and then when do we actually consider like ending a
Mm-hmm.
relationship versus continuing to work on it or just actually ending it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like we had mentioned, cheating.
Yeah.
If you have cheated on me, like that's just calling for an end right there. I
Mm-hmm.
just think no matter how much I love you or how much you say you love me, cheating on somebody is not love.
Yeah.
So I think that that is a reason why I would definitely end a relationship. For me personally, I know for you maybe it was a different story, but I think long distance, I think I would consider it.
Yeah.
I think if you were the right person, really the right person,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would, and the circumstances were right at the time, I would consider doing a long distance relationship. But for
Yeah.
me, long distance, um,
Is a
I
big
just,
factor.
it is a big factor, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for me,
Yeah.
just because I love to spend time with the person I'm in a relationship with. I think we mentioned in a previous episode that like one of my love languages, one of the more prominent ones is quality time and spending time with my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just don't feel like maybe you
Long
have a different point of
distance.
view, but I feel like with long distance, it's so much harder to find that quality time with each other. But I don't know, maybe you could share a little bit more about that.
I will say, I mean, I'm a big quality person as well. Um, but I think for long distance, at least for me, and I'm sure maybe other people have done long distance might agree, you find a lot of like your quality time in the time that you do have together. So you really, I guess, like cherish the time that you do have together, and then you really kind of had to squish it all into like one trip. And I think that kind of fills for the
For
time
you,
being.
did you feel like that was enough for you guys when you guys were dating, like and
Um,
doing long distance?
I mean, long distance, it's hard. I will say that. I think doing it while we were at the age we were at made it a lot harder. Like, I think if we were working and we had like the jobs that we have now, I don't think it would have necessarily been nearly as hard. Because I think we would have been able to like buy flights a little bit more frequently than we did, because when we were doing long distance, it was like, oh, like maybe we see each other like every 6 months or maybe once a year, just really depending. Or like it was mostly Ong that came to visit me, but there was a few times where it was like, okay, I'll come up here. Um,
Yeah,
so I definitely feel like long distance in general is hard, but I think when we were young, it was a little easier for us as well because, we're I was a teenager, so like I had other activities going on, I had other things going on for me in life. I was
To like
like,
occupy yourself
yeah,
with,
like
yeah,
spending time with family and like sports,
school and
school.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think that definitely helped pass the time by. But I think like if we were still doing long distance to this day, I would probably want us to like try and visit each other a little bit more frequently just to kind of like fill that void because yeah, it's definitely different when you are an adult and you kind of are settled into a routine versus like when you're a teenager and you still have so much going on in your life and things like that. So for sure. But yeah.
is there any other reasons why you would consider ending a relationship?
Um, I would say like obviously if they're abusive towards you, that's
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's easier said than done. I understand that, but I think that that is definitely if any sort of abuse happens, I think it warrants a check-in as like with yourself
yeah.
um to
I think it
really
depends too on like that person's circumstances and what kind
mm-hmm.
of support and resources they have.
Yeah.
Like I think it would be easy, for example, for us to be like, oh, we have so much support right
Mm-hmm.
now. Like if something happened in a relationship, we could easily end it. And we know like we'd have people who would support us in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, right? But
Yeah.
then I don't know, I feel like so many times though in those kind of abusive relationships that people get cut off from their resources and their
Yeah.
support system. So you kind of just it kind of just I think depends, on certain things. But
Yeah.
that is a good one though, I think for people to check it out on is not only just like actual physical like abuse, but more so lately like mental and psychological abuse.
Verbally. Yeah.
Yes. What do you think about weaponized incompetence? You've
What
heard
is
of this, right?
what is that? I am
So
not
it's
very
basically like weaponized incompetence is basically like this concept where somebody has the ability to do something, but they pretend. Okay, I could be wrong about this, but this is just my interpretation of it. Basically, somebody is capable of doing something um, in or for your relationship, but
mm-hmm.
they pretend to kind of like be bad at it so that they don't have to do it. If that makes sense.
Mm.
So, like for example,
Like taking
um,
advantage of
kind of.
another
So it's
person.
like
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm not trying to hate on men, okay? But for example, a lot of times like men in relationships, I've seen this a lot like IG reels and stuff like that, but the
Yeah.
woman will say their men will say like, "Oh, I'm not good at planning dates." Right? Like I don't plan
Mm.
dates because I'm not good at it. But then they can plan like this whole fantasy football like thing, like they're
Mm-hmm.
very particular about it. And so it's things like that, like showing that you're very capable of doing something for your relationship, um, but you're just choosing to not be good at it. Or you're saying, oh, like your husband says, oh, I don't wash the dishes because I don't wash the dishes like you do or like how you
Mm.
want it to. So you can just wash it how you want to. Um, because apparently I can't do it correct. But they're very capable of learning and of
Mm-hmm.
doing it. But they choose to kind
Choose
of do
not
it
to.
poorly so
Yeah.
that they get out of it. I
Mm.
guess that's kind of like the way that I interpreted it. I could be wrong, but I kind of felt like once I learned more about weaponized incompetence,
Mm-hmm.
that was very prevalent in my last relationship. So
Mm.
that is something I now would consider
A
when it
reason for
comes to ending
you.
a relationship because
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, it's just, and that's kind of comes in part with like just not caring anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you just don't care enough to try.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
weaponized incompetence is kind of a part, I think, of that.
Yeah, no, I personally haven't, I don't think, dealt with something like that. But I can definitely agree with you in the sense of when you mentioned your last relationship, how that kind of became a thing.
Mhm.
Um, because I mean, I guess it's kind of like, we were talking last episode, like if he wanted to, he would. Like
Yeah.
if he wanted to help you with the dishes, like he would. Instead, he's kind of putting this on you like, oh, well, I am not gonna do it because you do it so much better. Like, or
Yeah.
like, I guess
I
like a
think,
big thing with your last relationship was like, oh, you like always had to go pick him up and like drive him
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Or it
like,
was always like, I think the biggest thing for me was like the dates,
mm,
like, or special
yeah,
dates, like
occasions. Yeah,
anniversaries
right.
or like birthdays. It was never like, oh, I planned something for us, you know.
On
It was
his,
always
from his
me.
end.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was always just me being like, hey, what do we want to do? Giving him an opportunity or a chance.
Hmm.
But then it was just like, oh, I don't know, like just plan something, I guess.
Yeah.
Or it was like sometimes like when I planned stuff, it was always like things I felt both of us would enjoy
Hmm.
versus when he planned stuff, it was like only things that he would enjoy. Kind of like things like that
Mm.
um but it's definitely more me like planning things. And it was because he like wasn't a planner, wasn't good at planning stuff.
Hmm.
And
But
so I
then
was
if
always
he,
doing everything.
yeah, but then if he wanted to, he would plan those things, especially
Yeah.
for like big anniversary things. Like, I mean, it's one thing when it's like he spontaneously plans like a cute date night and it doesn't have to be for something big.
Yeah, and it
Um,
doesn't have to be
yeah,
something like fancy. I'm not
expensive,
expecting to
yeah.
go out every anniversary or birthday or whatever, but it's just the fact that you took your time to plan something,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to, kind of like just surprise me so that I don't have to do it all the time. And I think it goes both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
if he had planned something, I could have also planned something for a different anniversary or whatever, but it was just like consistently a continued pattern. So weaponized incompetence, that is a thing that
Another
I
one for
definitely
you.
consider. Mhm.
Yeah, that is definitely a good one. Like I said, I don't have particular experience with that, but I can understand why that would be one, especially
Yeah.
for you, because you've
Or
dealt with
let's
it and you
say,
don't want
yeah,
to.
like let's just say like in the future, for example, when you guys have
Yeah.
kids, um, and you're obviously like mom, so you're going to be taking care of baby a lot. I'm not
Yeah.
saying dads don't, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying Ong wouldn't, but
Yeah.
like if Ong were to display like weaponized incompetence, for example, then you would be like, hey, I need help. Like, I need you to feed the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, but you're like, oh, you got to hold the baby up though, because otherwise she's going to get reflux. And he's like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to hold the baby up with this hand while feeding with this hand and doing all this stuff. Like, I would need
Mm-hmm.
three hands. And you're like, well, I can do it, so you could do
Mm-hmm.
it. And I've had to learn, so you have to learn.
Yeah.
It's just like displaying things like that, like just kind of showing, like that you're not willing to step up and learn for yourself and for your
For the
relationship. Like
sake of like your
you
partner
have to
as
always
well.
you have to always be told like what to do,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like always be told what to do because you're so incapable of like doing it.
Yeah. I guess like
And
for me,
and then you
it's
sound like you're nagging and then
yeah.
we'll get into it. We'll get into it more.
Yeah, like I guess for me, like I understand because there are times where it sounds like I'm nagging, I guess,
Mhm.
but I'm also very vocal. Like I don't care if I'm being vocal. Like I will just say it. But that's just the type of person I am. But I understand that not everybody's like that. So, everybody's different in their own way, but I guess I am a little bit more vocal when it comes to things like that, or if I feel like there's unfairness in the relationship or like like we're not equally contributing. And it is true. I have seen like a phrase, or like a quote where it was like a marriage isn't always 50-50, and I 100% believe that's because sometimes, for instance, like I just don't have the energy, like for example, there's times where I don't have 100% of myself to give into the relationship. So then, maybe I'm giving like 30% and then Ong has to contribute a little bit more, or vice versa. I definitely think like in any relationship, there's always that like um give and take, like that pole where it's like you aren't always giving 50-50 equally. Sometimes you got to help and pick up a little bit extra for, your partner. And I think it it's about finding a healthy enough relationship where your partner can understand that, you might need a little bit more help in that moment,
Yeah.
or you might not be able to contribute or give enough in that moment, and they should learn to be okay to contribute a little bit more in that sense.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and then like as long as this isn't a consistent pattern, I think like if
yeah,
only one person's giving like 80% every
yeah,
single day of your
right.
relationship and you're only giving 20% and not helping this other person when they're not feeling that 80%.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
it's finding balance that on most days you guys can be towards 50-50, but on
Yeah.
days when you guys can't be, the other person will understand and kind of help contribute to that part of
Mm-hmm.
the relationship.
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's everybody isn't as vocal about things, but I think if you find the right partner that can kind of read you and understand, like, okay, she's probably not in the best like mood or in the best like doing her best at the moment, then it's like I think, that's something that is like I think that's something that you need to find in a partner, because if, like I said, if you're not vocal enough about it, sometimes people just can't like take a hint. But it's good to find somebody that knows you like the back of their hand, to
Yeah.
be able to,
Pick up
help
on
you in those
these,
moments. Yeah.
yeah, like pick up on these cues to just kind of be like, something's going on with her. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how can
Mm-hmm.
I get her back up to her 50%? Right.
Right. And then also
Uh,
um be willing to help you because you're their partner, versus like, oh, well, they're not feeling like they're not feeling,
yeah.
like their usual self. So like,
I'm just gonna leave them
whatever.
alone.
Yeah. And like, I'm still gonna just, you know, contribute my portion 50%. And if they can't, then that's on them. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But I guess like for everybody, it's different. But I do think that that is important for people to find, because like you were saying, weaponized incompetence, like eventually I feel like if I feel like eventually it will lead to that, where it's like or it could lead to that if you don't have a partner that, is willing to um I guess
Who's not willing to
pick
like
up.
show up? Yeah. Show
Yeah.
up, pick up, help you when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, yeah. So that's something I've come across recently.
Yeah.
Um, that just kind of made me think like, oh my God, this actually would be a really good thing to talk about
Yeah.
in
Or
this
like that's
segment.
actually a big
And it's a
like
big
thing
contributor
for me.
to,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
definitely.
so yeah, I guess like if you guys have any specific reasonings as to why you guys would end a relationship, feel free to comment down below and let us know your reasonings. All right. So the next question is, would you rather break up with someone or be broken up with?
Hmm. I've been in both situations.
Mm-hmm.
I've broken up with people, but I've also been broken up with. I think I would rather break up with somebody just because I know like it's on my terms.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I were to break up with somebody, um, I like wouldn't regret it because, okay, I think something that maybe people have to understand is that the way that I love is I always give everything where I don't give anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm breaking up with you, I've pretty much exhausted like all
All.
that I've got.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I think that if I break, yeah, I've exhausted everything that I've got. I
You
don't
gave it your
feel,
all.
yeah, I don't feel like there's much else for us to do. So I feel like if I were to end the relationship, it would be fully on my terms because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've exhausted everything that I could have done in that
Yeah.
relationship. So I feel like for me, it's just better to break up with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's never easy being the heartbroken one for sure.
Yeah.
But I think ideally, like you want it to be like mutual, the
Mm-hmm.
breakup. But I feel like it almost always never ends up that way. I just kind of
Yeah.
feel like no matter what happens in your relationship, there's always one who's breaking up, initiating that conversation, and then one on the
Mm-hmm.
other end who's receiving it and is being broken up with.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. I think I would much rather be the one to break up with somebody as hard as it is or as hard as it can be. Um, like you said, I think at that point we are the type of people where we've exhausted ourselves to the point where it's like we can't see a future with that person anymore. Like we've done everything we can, we've laid it all out on the table, and there's just no more give. We cannot physically give anymore, you know? And so I think in that sense, um I, it makes it easier or not easier, but it makes it, I guess, like I I guess for me it's like in that sense I would prefer to break up with somebody versus getting broken up with
Mhm.
because we're already so like set. Like we know exactly why we are doing this. We know exactly why we're ending it versus like you were saying when you're broken up with there's just so many unknowns even if you have that conversation of like well why are you breaking up with me like you just never know if like that's the real reason why
Mhm.
um, and so I feel like there's a lot more clarity that comes with like us breaking up with somebody versus being broken up with.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm not saying that like you choosing to break up with somebody is not hard. Like
yeah.
I think that does take a lot of to initiate and to
Mm-hmm.
actually like kind of do that and to come to that decision. It does take a lot of time to actually consider. Like I
Yeah.
think that you would have to take a lot of time to consider that and whether you're truly at your witch end.
Yeah.
And so leading up to it and then obviously knowing that you're gonna like hurt somebody or like break their
Mm-hmm.
heart um, I think that that's always like the hard part about being on the initiating end of it is that
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're going to be hurting somebody and that can be hard.
Yeah.
Um, and so sometimes like it's harder. I wouldn't say it's harder being the initiator, but I would rather be on that side of it because being
Yeah.
broken up with, like you said, just has so many like I feel like I was much more hurt in the cases where I was broken up with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, but like I also knew when I was being broken up with that it wasn't it, not that it wasn't my choice, but yeah, like it kind of wasn't really my choice. It's not really it wasn't my decision,
Mm-hmm.
and I could live with that.
Yeah.
Versus like some people, they do break up with people and they regret it and
Yeah.
they have. Not me particularly. I feel
Yeah.
like every relationship I've ever initiated breakup, I always like knew I
It
wasn't
was
gonna regret
done.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't gonna like ever have a chance in the future that I would regret it or I'd want to go back to this person, you
Yeah.
know? But
Mm-hmm.
some people do. Some people do. Some people, not me. But
Yeah. I mean,
so I'm not sure which one's like harder. But
yeah.
well, okay, being
I
broken
think
up
they're
with is definitely harder, but
yeah. I think they're both hard in their own ways. Um, but I definitely do feel like one is a little bit easier to navigate the aftermath versus
Right.
like the other. But I have heard that like I've seen it on like TikTok and like Instagram and stuff, but there's this like saying where it's like women they check out of a relationship a lot sooner than men do because it takes a lot for a woman to actually like come to terms with things and like she's processing for a long time before she decides to fully end things, which I do agree. Women, we we think a lot. And so I can see why like they say like, oh, a woman checks out of a relationship a lot faster than men do is because it's not necessarily we've checked out and we don't like we don't stop trying altogether. It's just we've come to terms with things a lot sooner than men have. And we've come to terms with the fact that it's probably not going to work out a lot sooner than, like men do. So I can understand that, but for sure like either way, navigating a breakup and going through all of that, the after effects is going to be hard regardless. Even if, you've thought about it for a long time and you're secure, you feel secure, about your decision and you feel like you're making the right decision, it doesn't make it any less harder when you do end up breaking up with this person and
Right.
it's not like you're not sitting there crying and you're not sitting there heartbroken over it. I
Yeah.
think you still have those moments, but it's just a little bit easier to get through because you've given it your all and you kind of know where you stand in it versus kind of when you're broken up with, you're kind of, I guess, blindsided a little bit. And so
Mhm.
it's all like a shock. And, you're having to deal with heartbreak all at the same time. So it's a little bit harder to navigate, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, being broken up with for sure. Okay, are you a believer in no contacts? And along with that, like, are you the kind of person that blocks people on social media, like your exes and whoever else may be involved?
I I don't know. I wish I could be the type of person that was like, oh, no contact and like block your ass. But I'm just not. Like, I will admit there's times that Ong and I have like broken up, and we still maintain that like communication with each other.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I think for me, I just like always want to give people the benefit of the doubt and always want to give them a second chance. Like that's just the type of person I am. I just want to see the good and hope that there's a good, right? Um, so I always kind of leave that door, I guess, kind of open. But I wish sometimes I just truly do wish I could be that type of person where it's like cut you off, but and like block you. But honestly, the only people I have blocked is all your exes. So yeah, literally the only people I have blocked are your exes, which is so funny to think
I think
about.
that's funny too. Like,
Yeah.
because it doesn't really have anything to like do with you, but like
Yeah.
I don't know. It just shows you're definitely an older sister.
Yeah,
Like, you know.
for sure. Like I think it's just yeah, the older sister coming out of me like but then also like I just sometimes I just don't like to see them pop up on my like things because there's some people where they're mutual friends or like we're friends with some of your exes family members, right? So sometimes it's like I see them and I'm like I don't want to see you. I don't want to see you posting on your page tagging that person, and so I'll just block you because seeing your face just irks me. But then, like I said, that's the older sister coming out. Um but yeah, that's it's just so funny that I personally don't block my own exes, but I block all yours. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I am definitely a blocker. Okay, to be fair, I've only blocked the exes that have brought me trauma.
Mm,
The other exes that I'm like, it was whatever. I don't block them.
yeah.
Just because like I felt like we've been able to like it's not even a relationship or a friendship like maintaining because I wouldn't even say I'm friends with them, but we just
Hmm.
like follow each other on social media and but we don't ever talk. So,
Yeah.
but I don't have a problem with them. I don't
Yeah.
feel like I have a problem with that. But the people who cause me trauma, you're definitely blocked. So, if you're watching this and I'm friends with you on social media, congratulations. You didn't bring me trauma. But
Yeah.
if you're watching this and you can't find me on social media, you are blocked. And yeah, don't be mad about what I talk about in this segment. Okay. And then in terms of no contact, I feel like no contact um I only did no contact really with one person who wasn't he wasn't my ex-boyfriend per se, but he was somebody that I was dating. Um
Hmm.
we weren't together, but we were going on dates. So we were dating and I made the decision to go no contact with him because after my last like long relationship, I did not go completely no contact. And so I thought that for this last guy I was dating, it would be easier. And it actually helped me a lot
Hmm.
um, to not have any contact at all. But we both agreed to do no contact because I literally was just like, um, I was like, it would be a lot easier for me if you didn't reach out to me. And if I didn't reach out to you, I don't have your number. I don't have anything of yours. It was
Uh,
sad. It was hard. It
yeah.
was very hard, but I felt like it did help me um, because I didn't have an opportunity. I didn't have a chance at all to contact this person whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
I will say I think it was more your decision to do non-contact. I think if that person, I know who you're talking about. So I think if that person um had a choice, I think they would still have communicated kept that communication with you for sure. But I
I
think that
think so
person
too.
respected you enough that they were
Hmm.
like, as sad as it is and as much as I wish it was different, I respect, you know, her
I respect like
decision.
yeah, I felt like he respected my decision
Hmm.
to go no contacts because he knew how much easier it would be for me.
Yeah, and he
Like he
knew
was
that like you have goals, you have ambitions, and he didn't want to get in the way of that. And I I commend him for being able to do that because I think that is heartbreaking is and I've told you this. I think it's so heartbreaking because I think for sure if he could have maintained that communication and that contact with you, he probably would have. I mean, who knows? I always joke with you saying like, what if he really didn't delete your number, but like he's just like waiting for the right moment, to like come back into your life and like you just think he deleted your phone number, but in reality, what if he didn't? Like I always just joke with you
I
like
don't
that. But I mean, you just
know.
never know. But I think yeah, it was very it made him I guess it made him look like a really good person because he was able to set aside his own needs and wants, I guess, and for like the sake of you and the betterment of you. So I definitely commend this this man's um for that.
Yeah, I would say of even though it was not a relationship and not really like a breakup, it was
Hmm.
definitely one of the more mutual endings that I've
Hmm.
had in
Yeah.
terms of like, any kind of like romantic communication. I think that
Hmm.
was probably the healthiest one that I've had.
For sure.
But yeah, I think for me personally, I felt the no contact on my end helped because it helped
Hmm.
me just kind of like not be tempted or not feel tempted to reach out to him. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but my other ones, like my last one that I was actually in a relationship with, I did I tried to do no contact, but I did break it
Mm-hmm.
like a few times. Not excessively, but maybe like once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have done it. I was really dumb, but I did it. And I just realized by not going no contact personally, um, that like I was kind of just making myself look foolish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or I felt that way anyway about myself. Like I felt like I was making myself look foolish for trying to like still maintain contact and still having hope, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
that even though it was very clear that the relationship was over. And
Yeah.
so, I just don't want to keep hanging. I think from now on, I would just consider going no contact because I don't want to consider
From like
hanging
the
on.
immediate breakup, right?
Yeah, like to
Yeah.
continue holding on and hoping. It
Letting
just
that
takes so
like
much.
linger.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
takes so much energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I tried no contact with this last person and I felt like
Mm-hmm.
it worked really well. So I do want to
Yeah.
continue implementing that. But yeah, blocking, you gotta really have done something wrong if I blocked you. But it's not necessarily that I hate you. I still think no matter how hard it was or no matter how traumatic you made my life,
Yeah.
like there's still enough good out there in the world that everyone deserves good, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. I deserve good, you deserve good and happiness in your life as well, even
Mm-hmm.
though we're separated and not a part of each other's life anymore.
Right.
Um, because I truly feel like once your paths are on diverging paths,
Yeah.
you just like you're not meant to like see each other anymore, you know? So,
I mean, you would think, but there is one ex of yours that
he
you,
keeps popping up.
yes,
And I'm just
but
kind of like, but I can't really be mad about it. Like,
yes,
I
because it's
really,
not in our control.
yes,
It's just that we have mutual friends.
yes,
So there's certain, I mean, there was a certain time where we were all at the same place at the same time with the same people. And so it's like in those circumstances, we had to just kind of tolerate it. But I think,
yes.
yeah, for sure. If
But it's
you
not
if you had the
something I would
choice, yeah,
choose or
if
to
you
go
had
out
the
of my
choice, you
way to
definitely
like,
wouldn't. Yeah.
yeah.
So
But yeah, I would just say, I just block because I don't need to know, like you said, I don't need to know what's going on in
yeah.
I don't need to be tempted to
Right.
check.
Yeah.
Um, and so because okay, let's be real. Women are like this. Like we just and it's not even exes.
Yeah.
It's like with everybody. Like, oh my gosh, this person I used to go to I was friends with in middle school. Like, let's see what their life's like now.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, like it's just things like that. And it's just because like I don't know, when you lose connections with people, you just want to know like what they're doing or how they're
Hmm.
doing,
Hmm.
whether it was like a positive or a negative interaction. I just
Yeah.
gotta, I don't know. Do you agree? Like, I feel like a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of
No,
women are like this.
yeah.
If
A
it's just
hundred,
us,
yeah.
I highly doubt it, but
100%. And if you're a woman and you're sitting here and you're saying, no, you're not that type of person, you are. You
yeah,
are. You just don't want to admit it to yourself. Every woman does this, whether it's random people you went to elementary school with, middle school, high school. You just it's natural. It's natural for you to be curious on how certain people's lives ended up, what they're currently up to, but like you don't
yeah,
necessarily have to be their friend to know these things, or like
yeah.
it's not like you want to check up on them because you genuinely care about them. You're just being nosy. That's just what it is. We'll just say
You're
it
just,
as it is. You just want to be nosy.
you're just
Yeah,
curious.
you're curious and you just want to be nosy, and that's okay. Just admit it to yourself already.
It's
There's no
okay.
harm in that.
And there's no harm in it unless, like, you're like 5 years down and then suddenly you like a post or something.
Yeah.
Then you gotta like do some damage control. But
Yeah, for
not
sure.
speaking from personal experience. But anyway, so yeah, I am no contact blocker kind of
Yeah.
person. Just because I don't need to know. Kind of like what you said too. If you're typed in something, like I really could
Mm-hmm.
care less, but I also just like don't need to know anything about you.
Yeah.
And I will say, if you are blocked, if you're on my blocked list, you're
Mm-hmm.
blocked for life.
Yeah.
You will literally think that I am dead. Like
Yeah.
you will hear nothing from me and nothing about me, and I will block you on everything,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So you will not be able to find anything about me.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of already touched base on what I did on
Mhm.
like second chances. Um, but where do you, I guess, stand on that? Because I said I always believe in like people can change and like willing to give them that second chance, I guess, because that's just like the type of person I am. I always want to see the good. But where do you stand with that?
I think I do believe in it to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Very much like you, I think I do like to also give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because like we're not perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes, but if there's something that's just absolutely like I cannot forgive you, like
Yeah.
if you cheat on me, um, I would not give you a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was actually cheating on me or emotionally cheating on me, um, I would never I would never give you a second chance just
Yeah.
because like but in some other cases I would consider it. Like that guy, for example, that we were talking about earlier that I had like this really
That you had to go no
um
contact with.
yeah, the one that I went no contact with, that I really did like, if it was the right time in the future and he ever
Mm-hmm.
made his way back here, um and had planned to stay here, I think I would consider giving him a second chance. But
Yeah.
that's because the circumstances too, right? Like,
Yeah. In the way that you guys, I guess, ended things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if he was single and if I was single, I mean, obviously, but
Yeah.
circumstances could also be different at that time. Like,
Yeah.
what
What
if
if you're
I,
in a relationship? Then
yeah.
obviously you're not gonna continue with that. I mean, would you?
I don't think so.
Like,
Like,
would you?
if you're already in another committed relationship, like
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to consider it. I think if I was like in another relationship and I was really happy in that relationship, I would not
Hmm.
let this person like put any kind of doubt in my mind about the current relationship that I'm in. But if
Yeah.
I was like in a relationship but it wasn't going well and I was maybe on the verge of breaking up with this person, I would kind of
Already.
be
Yeah.
like, I don't really know, but I
Yeah.
don't think I would jump into that like right away. I wouldn't just be like, oh, this guy is like coming at me, I'm gonna break up with you, and then automatically move on within, a few months to this other
Yeah.
guy. I would still give myself the appropriate amount of time to like heal,
Hmm.
to like be on my own, you know,
Yeah.
um, because I don't think, yeah, because I just feel like I don't know, it's still like not right, you know, to
Yeah.
like be in a relationship but consider somebody
Somebody
else, like,
else
or
on the
be
sideline.
interested in somebody else. And yeah, she's got big opinions on that. And we'll talk about it more in a minute.
Yes. So, like, when you are going through a breakup, personally, how do you feel like what are things that you do to feel like get over the breakup, basically?
Yeah, I think the hardest one, the hardest breakup for me was the end of my long-term relationship.
And guys,
Um,
when we're talking long term, we're talking like almost a decade together. So
yeah,
that's what we mean.
this is long term. Okay, for some of y'all, you guys literally think like 2, 3 years. Okay, 2, 3 years is long term. Okay, it
Yeah,
is a long time, but I'm talking like 8, nine
long
years,
term.
guys. Okay, so
Yeah.
that was obviously the hardest one to get over
Hmm.
because you also invested just like so much of your time, or I invested so much of my time in this relationship. So that
Mm-hmm.
one was definitely the most difficult, and it took me good like a good like half a year, I think, to like fully get over it.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, getting over that, the first few months were especially the hardest. And I think a lot of it and a lot of going through breakups is just having allowing yourself to feel
Mm-hmm.
exactly what it is that you need to feel.
Yeah.
And there's so many emotions that go along with it. Like you're obviously sad and depressed, but you're also pissed and
Yeah.
you feel guilty, but you also have a lot of pity for yourself. And I don't know, like, I think for a lot of it, I just wanted to not feel that way anymore. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I was asking people literally, like, how the heck do I get over this?
Yeah.
Like, what can I do to just not feel this way anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, as hard as it is to hear this answer, but also as true as this answer is, time,
Yes.
time is everything.
Yeah.
um, and like I said, it's not something that you want to hear because everyone was always telling me, like, it's going to take time, take it day by day, time. And I'm like, I don't got time. Like, I want this to be over now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely the hardest thing I think to understand is that getting over the breakup for me, I needed a lot of time. But definitely in the beginning, it's just allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel. So, um, if I was up at night thinking about a lot of things, I couldn't sleep and I had to, I like slept in till like the next afternoon. Then I
Mm-hmm.
would allow myself grace during that
Yeah.
time because I knew like I was going through a lot and my
Yeah.
body was like literally dysregulated.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, just allowing myself to feel what I need to feel, giving myself grace for how I felt,
Mm-hmm.
and then just allowing time to eventually keep going. I also occupied myself a lot with people that I knew supported me.
Yeah.
So I made a trip out to Oregon.
Yeah.
This is like maybe a
July.
month. Yeah, this is like a month and a half,
Yeah.
maybe, or yeah, a month, a little bit
Uh-huh.
after, maybe. When I came out, because I was like, I just need to get out of here. I need to be out of this house doing the same thing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I just need a change of scenery. I need to do
Yeah.
something different. So I did go to Oregon, and all my girls were there except for one, but all
Yeah.
my girls were there. So it was just like fun because, we stayed up late, played games, drank wine, talked
Yeah.
about the breakup, but also talked about other things. So it just kind of helped me really process and get through at that point what was a very like probably the most difficult time frame I think that I was going through at that
Yeah.
time.
Well, because it was still so fresh. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, given it was probably like a little over a month, I
Mhm.
want to say after, but yeah, that's still really, really fresh in terms of time um after a breakup. So
Mhm.
I just remember honestly, I think a lot of people were worried for you. Not necessarily like um in a bad way. I just think we worried about you in the sense of we cared for you and we were just worried on how you were coping.
Mhm.
More so, not in the sense of like you can't get over this and like you're like never going to be able to get over this. We knew that with time, like we were telling you, it just takes time. Like we knew with time you would be able to come to yourself again. But, I think in that moment, a lot of us were worried for you just because it was still so fresh and, you know, you did kind of like take the time you needed to kind of process it on your own, which I respect, but like you didn't really let everybody else know how you were feeling. And so I think that kind of worried some people. And then you know, for me, it was like, I was worried about you in the sense of like, obviously I'm your older sister. So that's just like, it comes naturally. But I think like for me, it was like, I didn't want to poke and pry these things out of you either because I knew it was a sensitive subject and I knew it was like something you just had to go through on your own, you know?
Yeah, I think that's always the hardest part about
Hmm.
watching somebody go through breakup because I've been the one who's gone through it, but I've also watched a lot of people go through breakups too. And like sometimes it's you're so limited on what you can do to help this person,
Hmm.
right? Like only they can really heal themselves
Yeah.
truly, but you want to try to help them as much as you can. It's just that you also want to respect their privacy, give them space to
Yeah.
like process.
Yeah.
Um,
And go through it on their own. And I think for me, it's like when I, I think for me, I've become very hyper aware of like other people and like their thoughts and their feelings on certain things because I kind of think of it as like if that was me, I wouldn't want to be, asked a bunch of questions or like I wouldn't want people to bombard me when I'm going through things, like especially like things that I need to like process that have like either happened to me. So like I think that's why like for me it was like I kind of when it came to that breakup, I kind of was like, if you want to tell me, you can, but like I want you to do it on your own terms when you feel like you're ready.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, like I said, that's just how I am these days, is because I I try to think of it. I feel like I'm very considerate and I try to think of it as if it was me. And so that's why, I was like, I am a little worried for you in the sense of like, I hope you're doing okay and
Yeah,
coping with it well. But also, I
like
understand you
yeah,
need the time that you need to process everything. Like, you had a whole 9 years to really go through and grieve. And so I was like, take all the time that you need. Like, I just
yeah,
want to be here for support. I don't want to be another like nuisance, I guess, to you. Or, yeah. So,
yeah. I think I always felt like for the people in my life at that time who were just like, "Hey, if you need us, we're here."
mhm,
And sometimes like that was all that I felt I really needed to hear because I knew that I had to go through a lot of this on my own. But
yeah.
I never felt alone though.
Mhm.
Like I never
Yeah.
felt alone at all during that process. I
Yeah.
always felt like I had good support. Um, but I always knew that like in terms of actually healing, in terms of actually accepting and everything like that, that was
Yeah.
all something that I had to do. No one could ever show me how to do that. No one could ever tell me how to do that. It's like something I had to fully work through by myself.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think also it's really like it was a relationship between you and that other person, like no one else was really involved, obviously. So it makes sense why you need to process it on your own because
yeah.
you were the one that was in the relationship with that person. Um, but you know, I understand why people were worried, but I think, like you said, a lot of like the support that you did have, it was like we weren't necessarily checking in, I would say, like, how are you? It was more just like messaging you here and there, like, I hope you're doing okay,
Mhm.
take all the time that you need.
Yeah, it was never like a situation where I felt like I was forced to talk
Hmm.
back with you or like reply.
Right.
A lot of people did this though. It was always just like, "Hey, I hope that you're having a good day." Like just
Yeah.
little things like that really made me feel supported still, even though I
Yeah.
didn't want to talk about things.
Right. And I
Um,
and I think that's why like it was so nice of people to understand that. It's like she's going through some shit and she needs to process it. But doesn't mean we still can't be there for her and let her know that like we are there for her. Um just in a more subtle way, I feel like.
Okay, so I feel like I have been talking too much about myself because a lot of this is more recent for me.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit more about kind of your experience. So when you and Ong broke up and had kind of like that little period in your relationship
Hmm.
where you guys did decide to end things, that was after what, like a year?
Yeah, wait,
Right?
was it a year? No, okay. So we were, I don't think a lot of people know this about our relationship. We were together for like, let's see, June, July, August, September, like four
Oh my
months.
God,
We
girl.
were, I know, we were together for like 4 months, and then um he broke up with me.
Was it really only 4 months? I swear it was
Yeah.
like longer.
No, it was 4 months, but it took us a year to get back together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I was confused. Okay,
Yeah.
so 4 months, obviously a much shorter like time frame, but before that you guys were like friends. So you guys had
Mhm.
known each other still for quite some time before you
Yeah.
started dating. And then you had this, 4 month period where you guys were actually together, broke up, and then a year later you guys got back together. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know kind of what your experience was like after that breakup in your guys' relationship. I know it wasn't as long, but I'm wondering,
Yeah.
was it easier or like how did you within that 1 year time frame kind of like get over or not get over, but get through the breakup that you had?
Um, I will say my experience was definitely different than yours. Because let's just say, like, let's see. I think, yeah, Owen broke up with me. I think it was sometime in early October. And then the next month, November, was like Hmong New Year, right? And so I think within that time frame, I jumped pretty fast. Basically from like October, sometime in October through November. Um, I started talking to another guy. It was just casual. Um, yeah, it was just casual and it was different for me because, Ong and I was long distance. And so I was like talking to this guy that was in state and he was a little closer in age to me. Um, and it was just very casual. It was just like, oh, you know this person? Oh, yeah, I know of them. And then things kind of progressed from there, but it was never like we were like official. Like me and this person, we never were official.
Yeah.
We weren't like boyfriend and girlfriend. We were
You
just
guys were what we
dating.
called back then talking,
Yeah.
which is what we call now like dating, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. So we were like dating, but it was never really official. Um, but I definitely will say I don't think he was my rebound for sure. Um I don't want to say that's the best way I could have handled the breakup, but that was just like in that moment my way of handling. Um and I know a lot of people do this where it's like they go through a breakup and they just kind of need to get it out of their system. And so they go through like a rebound. And I think that's kind of like what I did. So I started talking to this new guy. We'll call him Mickey. And
Hmm.
yeah, so I started talking to this Mickey guy. And
And
like I
let me
said,
tell you guys, guy, okay, this Mickey guy, you know that song, Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. He was not fine.
yeah, honestly, he's probably the guy I'm most embarrassed about to
Okay.
say that like but we all have one.
We all have
We
one.
all have one, but he is mine for sure. But
Yes,
he was a
Mickey.
rebound. And like I said, it was just very casual at first and then things progressed. Eventually, we got each other's phone numbers, we were texting, and like he would always text me good morning in the mornings. And at first I was like, "Oh, this is
This is
cute.
cute.
This
This
is
is sweet.
nice."
Yes, yes.
Um and then, we were kind of just still dating, talking. He lived in state, so I was actually able to see him and hang out with him and do things. Like we didn't. I don't want to say we ever went on dates because I think from what I remember, his parents were very strict about him dating. And
Mhm.
so we never actually went on dates. It was always like mom taking me to
It
go
was like a
like
chaperoned event. Like,
yeah. It was always like, oh,
oh,
we either pick him up and like he's just driving around with like me and mom. Um, or like we just go because his family had a Chinese restaurant. They owned a Chinese restaurant. And so it was like, oh, we go to the Chinese restaurant in the parking lot and like just meet him there. But it was never like we never actually had like a date, which I think is weird. Like he did play basketball for high school and I did go to one of his games. Um, but that was so awkward because
yeah.
he kept trying to lay moves on me there and I'm like, we're in public. Like, this does not, like, I don't know. It was weird. And like I said, I wasn't like fully interested in him. It was just to get my mind off of the breakup. So it was a little cringe for me. And then, like I said, the next month was November, which is Hmong New Year. And he had some Hmong friends, like he knows Hmong people. So he went. And so we obviously hung out there and we were like acting like a couple, but like we weren't. Um, and then like we went to the after party together. Uh, and then let's see. After that, it was like getting close to Christmas, but he was gonna go visit him and his family, like we're gonna go visit his family overseas for like actual Christmas. So we just exchanged Christmas gifts before Christmas. Uh and that was freaking cringe as well. He gave me
Yeah,
this
I
like
was there for
yeah.
it.
Um yeah, so that was cringe. But
Wait,
then
I do have a question for you though that I've been dying to know, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about it, but I just kind of forgot and I don't
yeah.
remember. When you guys exchanged gifts,
Hmm.
did you guys kiss?
Yeah. That was so that was the first time that we actually kissed.
But it was
Um
just a little like peck.
yeah, it was just peck. That was the first time we kissed. It was the worst kiss of my life because this guy had Mickey had some crusty dusty lips. Um and I think in that moment I got the ick so bad that I knew I was not going to continue talking to
You're
this guy
like, this
after
is the
that.
right time. You're going overseas.
Yeah.
It's time to end this.
Yeah, so literally he came back from overseas. I think he was only gone for like a week or two. He came back and then after that like I said, text me every morning. That started to get annoying. Because he was kind of just always on my case, like, you know. And then I literally just told him, I was like, I think I did it over text. I forget. Because I did not want to see him anymore. So I did it over text and I was like, hey, this is not gonna work out. Like, I'm sorry. I just don't see this going any further, you know? So like please don't contact me again. And then he like
At least you're
still would
nice
text
about it.
me. Yeah, and then he would still text me. He wouldn't take a hint. He would still text me um
Good
good
morning.
morning after
Blah, blah,
that
blah.
and like was adamant and I would just literally had to ghost his ass because he just couldn't take a hint. Like it's not that I wasn't verbal with him about it, you know? Um, but I was, and he couldn't take a hint. So I eventually just had to ghost him and block his number. And then finally, he couldn't communicate with me anymore. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how I mean, I guess it's kind of like a two for one on how I handled breakups. So,
I think, yeah, I think, well, I remember Mickey, and I just y'all, I did not like this guy at
Yeah.
all.
Izzy absolutely
I like
despised
despise him
him.
and for good reason,
Hmm.
um but he was like the rebound.
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
I was just kind of like, whatever. She just needs to get over this
Yeah.
sooner than later. I would prefer. But
Yeah.
um so, yeah, you're right though. A lot of people sometimes do use rebounds.
Hmm.
I feel like I did not. I really took the time to like process everything. Well, okay. I wouldn't say he was really rebound because it's not like we actually like dated. I think though that I developed like several crushes though
Mm.
after my long-term breakup. And it was
Hmm.
like you said, just more so to be distracted.
Yeah.
Like to kind of just get your mind off of it. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes like that is something that I did as well was like distract myself with like new crushes.
Hmm.
Even though like I didn't know I was kind of chicken to like really pursue anything with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that was kind of like a two for one is after my breakup with Ong, it was like I went straight into a rebound. And then that break, I guess that breakup, it wasn't like I said, we were never official, but
Yeah.
that ending of that dating relationship was like, I literally just cut it off
Ghosted
with
him.
him and then ghost him. And then I think it was then that I kind of had more time. So probably like January, I want to say, was when I finally had time to really, I guess, like process my breakup with Ong. Like I said, I didn't really have to process my relationship with that Mickey guy because I
Yeah.
knew it was done. But like I think it wasn't until January that I really got the chance to process like my breakup with Ong. And I mean, it was like I think Christmas when Ong like called me or texted me like Merry Christmas or something. And then that's kind of when we started like talking to each other again. But just as friends, solely just as friends. Because I had a lot of trust issues with him after that. And so it was just we were just friends and um basically, we would talk here and there. And then I think slowly, like, we just realized that there was still obviously something there. And like, I know from Ong's perspective, he really regretted breaking up with me as he should. um, but he really regretted he tells me all the time, but he really regretted breaking up with me. And he like literally the moment after he did it, but he said that he kind of had to go through his own process because he was like basically saying that if he did want to try and be with me again, he wanted to prove that he was different and that he's changed, and so that's why it took a year.
Do you feel comfortable like sharing what happened in the first place? Like why you guys broke or why he broke up with you?
Yeah, so I think Ong and we remember it happening very differently. um I want to say my version of events was what really happened. Because
Of course you do.
well, because Om just doesn't have the best memory like at all. He can't even remember like what he wore like 2 days ago. Um, but he just doesn't have good memory, and I feel like my memory is pretty decent. But I mean, of course, I'm gonna believe myself my story more than his. But from my version, it was he went down for his uncle's funeral to California, Fresno. Um, and obviously, I'm a very jealous person. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it. I'm a jealous person. So I was already, I was already kind of dreading this trip. Like, yes, I knew he was there for a funeral, but I also knew. he's young and there's a lot of Hmong girls there. Um,
Yeah, Hmong people use funerals sometimes as breeding ground. Well, not breeding
yes,
ground, but places
meeting
to meet
grounds.
people.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I was already kind of in my head about things, insecure, and jealous. And so, it's when he was there for the funeral, I would call here and there, text here and there, just to say, like, hey, what are you guys up to? How are things going? Just kind of checking in. And I remember him telling me that there was some instances with girls, specifically a girl that was at the like his family's apartment complex. Like I guess she was telling Ong's cousin, guy cousin, that she thought Ong was cute. Um, and like Ong was telling me all this, and I was like, well, did you act on it? Like, what came of it after that was revealed to you? And
Mhm.
he just kind of like brushed me off, like, and then like, he ended up coming back home from the funeral, and I just kind of pressed him a little bit more about the girls at the
That
funeral and like that instance of that girl. And then I think he just was not liking that I was getting on his case about it and like wanting to know these answers. And so he was just so done with it that he like ended it with me. So I will say my jealousy did play a role and my insecurity
Mhm.
for sure did play a role in our breakup, but also like he was the one that officially was like the one that broke up with me. So that's initially like the reason why we first broke up. Um, and then, like I said, he regretted it immediately after. And then it took a whole year for him to, I guess, like prove himself to me that like he wasn't just gonna break up with me again. And like he's not that type of person where he's just gonna give up so easily.
Mhm. Yeah, like he had to prove to you basically he was willing to actually work through problems with
Right.
you and not
Right.
just like every time there's an issue or some
Yeah.
kind of going on that you guys are just gonna break up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm like, okay, yeah, I would give someone a second chance because I did. I gave Ong a second chance, but it took a lot of like him having to do the work to prove to me. And I had to be able to see that change in him, Because I think like any other given day, if it was another relationship and that person wasn't proving to me that they were a different person and like they weren't trying to be better, I don't think I would give that person a chance. But with Ong,
Yeah.
it was different. So I think that's why, like, it's kind of like hit or miss for me when it comes to giving a second chance.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, it was all meant to be, I guess, because
I
here we
know. I was
are.
like, now you got that ring.
I know. And
No, I
yeah,
do remember, yeah, this kind of instance. I mean, okay, we weren't to be fair, you and I were not very close.
no,
We're not as close as we were back then as we are now. So sometimes I
your
kind of knew like the
version.
general stories of
Yeah,
like what had happened, but it's still surprising to me sometimes like when we talk about things like this, like the little details that were missed back then that suddenly
yeah,
like pop out now and you're like, wow, I didn't know that happened. So
yeah.
also like yeah, I think I was just like going through a lot at that time too myself.
Hmm.
Not actually going through a lot. Like I was really young.
You're
So
like 13.
what could I really be going through? But no, I was though, kind of.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think like we're both just so much in our own world sometimes that we just like don't really pay that much attention to each other's problems. But I
Hmm.
do remember that whole process of like I just knew like you guys were broken up, but I didn't really know why. But then you kind of told me about it a little bit as we
Yeah,
got older. And then I was like, wow, I didn't really know that was what happened.
yeah.
So it's just like things like that when we retell these stories, it's good to hear again because sometimes just little things get missed or slip through the
Mm-hmm.
cracks. But yeah, I do remember seeing you go through the whole breakup phase, the rebound phase, and
Yeah.
then just you guys getting really reacquainted with each other again
Mm-hmm.
because but yeah, I think if anyone taught me anything about giving people a second chance, it was actually probably you guys because I could see that sometimes second chances can be beneficial.
Yeah.
If you're really willing to work for it,
Mm-hmm.
it can happen. Um, so yeah, that was, something that I noticed a lot in childhood is, watching you guys and yeah, then he started coming around again and
Yeah.
um I will admit, at first, I was kind of like, I don't really know how I feel about this when you guys started talking again because I was just kind of like, I was like, I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, I guess you're the older sister, yes. So I think
Mm-hmm.
seeing you, you have like this distinct like protectiveness, I guess, as an older sister.
Mm-hmm.
As a younger sister, I'm just kind of there.
Yeah.
Not that I don't support you or I
Yeah.
wouldn't do the same for you. It's just that when I was younger, it's just kind of like, okay, you kind of just have to let her, you kind of just have to let her do what she feels is right, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I did that, but I was a little skeptical and wary because I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know, is he gonna just break up with her again?
Yeah.
But then he did prove himself too. So it wasn't just proving himself to you,
Mm-hmm.
it was proving himself to like our family.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to me and our mom who knew about the
Mm-hmm.
situation, but things
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah. I mean, you know, I do think it would have been crazy, like, had Ong and I not reconnected. Cause yeah, like it's just crazy how life unfolded after that. I do feel like once we like made it official the second time around, I think things were a lot more serious between us versus like
yeah.
the first time it was just kind of like, young love.
Mm.
Um, but for sure, like after when we got back together again, it was a lot more serious. It was like, okay, and that's when he started visiting more frequently, which I also think helped with our relationship as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, everybody goes through it at one point, a breakup, and everybody kind of handles things differently. That's just kind of how I handled that breakup. Um, but yeah, I think I think my go-to is like a rebound because if I think about other breakups that I've had, like I don't know if it's just the timing of it was always around Mongnia or something, but like it was just easy to like find another
Find
guy
somebody
during that
else.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've only ever had like
Yeah.
one rebound
Yeah.
um of like my relationships.
Hmm.
And it was kind of like that one was obviously around our relationship only lasted like a month and then it was just like over. So but I wasn't like too hurt about it because
Yeah.
you know, I also knew that it wasn't meant to be. Like it wasn't meant to
Yeah.
last.
Hmm.
Was not meant to last. So yeah. But everyone deals with it differently, I would say. Let's see. How what was the next question?
It's how do you think your life would have turned out had you been with one of your exes?
Oh, so if we hadn't broken up.
Hmm.
Um, ooh. Um, ooh. I think I think if I had gotten married to my long-term ex,
Hmm.
I think if I had gotten married to him, I don't think I would have been happy. Um, I don't think either of us would have been happy.
Yeah.
Just because um I don't know. It's it's hard to explain without having any like context, I guess, to it. So basically, I think for like a really long time, both of us like were not happy
Hmm.
with each other. But we were just kind of like dealing and facing through things because I think that's what we thought relationships were supposed to be. It's just like, well, it's what I thought relationship was supposed to be. Is that you're always sticking through stuff together, no matter how
Hmm.
difficult it gets or whatever, and it's normal, I think, for long-term couples to like hit a point in a relationship where things are just kind of like
Stagnant. Like,
stagnant. Yeah,
yeah.
there's not much going on.
Hmm.
But I think the thing is that towards the end, we're kind of at the point in the relationship where things were okay, but they
Hmm.
weren't great.
Hmm.
Um, and so And I don't think that's ever a way that anyone should describe their relationship.
Yeah.
So if you had that mentality and you carried that into marriage, into eventually maybe having children together, I don't think that when I think about it in that retrospect, I don't think that we would have been happy.
Hmm.
Um, so like I personally think that
I think a
like
lot of,
you know how some people say you could be a single person in a married
yeah.
you could be a married single person.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Like you're married, but essentially you're doing everything. Like
Hmm.
I just kind of feel like that's how it would have ended up for me. Like I would have had a partner, but I would have felt alone in a
You would have had a
relationship.
partner, but you wouldn't have had a husband, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, I wouldn't have had like a true partner. I would have been more playing the role of like this
Doing
person's
everything.
mom.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
me doing everything for this person and them not contributing as much. And I just feel like that would have really tore at me and wasted me away into like I wouldn't have known who I was.
Yeah.
I think after this breakup, I really came into to like re-finding myself again because
Hmm.
admittedly in my actual relationship when I was still in it, I was very depressed.
Yeah.
I felt like, oh, I'm in this happy relationship. I have a great family. I have a whatever, but I still felt very lost. I still
Yeah.
felt like I didn't know who I was. And
Hmm.
that's because there was so much going on with me wanting to be, having expectation to be someone's girlfriend, having expectation to be, you know, a family member and active family member in this family. Like, just I took on so many roles. So there was a lot that was contributing, but basically the main thing was in that relationship, I felt like I had to be even more
Hmm.
because of so many different factors, weaponized incompetence, not incontinence. Sorry, that means you pee or poop on yourself. That's not what I meant. Um, I just mean, I just felt like but I was really depressed because I had no idea who I was. I had no sense of self. And in turn, I think that did make me also insecure.
Hmm.
And you know, I was insecure because I didn't know who I was. I couldn't. So after the breakup, it was very hard, but I did come to and really step into who I am. I found
Hmm.
more of a sense of myself.
Yeah,
Um,
agree.
so I think if I was still in that relationship, I think I still would have been really like lost.
Miserable. I think you
I
would have
would have
been
been
miserable.
really lost and just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I
Yeah.
don't know. And I think I still would have been very behind. Like I wouldn't have gotten as far as I have come to this
Yeah.
day. And part of that really, I think, had to do with also not making my partner feel small.
Yeah.
And, but that's not really what you guys should be doing. You guys should really be helping each other grow. But
Hmm.
I did not feel like he wanted to grow
With you. Yeah.
with me or even just himself.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have any motivation to really better himself or his life, and let alone a life with me.
Hmm.
So I felt like I felt like I couldn't grow.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should ever be like that in a relationship where you're hindering the other person from being their best self, right? And I
Yeah.
never wanted to be like to overshadow him when I was in a relationship. I never wanted
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And so I stunted my own growth
Right.
so we could
Yep.
like stay at the
That's
same
exactly what
level.
it
And
is.
that's not what that's not what any relationship should be like. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think going forward, looking at who I want in a partner, I want to make sure that there's somebody who's going to be actively growing with me and actively growing themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's some of the major things that would have happened if we were to still be together. I don't think that I would be as far career
In
and
life. Yeah.
academically in life right now than I would have been back then. And I don't think that I would have really found, who I really am, who I like to be and who I want to be.
Yeah. I agree. I also think it would have been hard for you mm, dealing with his family dynamics and their like not to say you didn't get along with his family, but I think it would have been hard for you to adjust to living um in the house
I think
that,
so too. I think so too.
yeah.
It's always different, I think, when you transition to moving in
Mm-hmm.
with your partner and their family. It was something that we talked about, but like I always felt really hesitant.
Yeah.
Um, because I think I just really felt like doing that would really drive me away. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know not everyone is clean. Not everyone really was raised to know how to like do chores and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But like, I don't know, there was just so much stuff that when I saw it just annoyed me and because it's not how I would have wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in terms of like hygiene.
Yeah.
Okay. But, I did get along though with his family. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we keep in touch, but we are social media friends.
Yeah.
And when I see them out at like events and stuff like that, I still say hi to them. I mean,
Yeah.
we're still very nice, friendly, but we don't talk to each other a lot. And I think it's
Yeah.
good to still establish
Keep it
that
that way.
boundary.
Yeah.
But I think we still have respect for each other. And that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
something that I feel is good. It's just that, yeah, I think it would have been really hard for me to like still, especially when it came to like his mom, it probably would have been really hard to adjust to a life with living with her.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think it is for everybody. Like
Yeah.
adjusting to living with any parent-in-law would have
It
been really
really is.
hard.
Yeah. But for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I think those are the main things that would have happened if we had not, broken up. Um, and then I also think that I would have just had continued issues with like trust, and insecurity just based off of how things ended
Mm-hmm.
between us.
Yeah.
And like I really don't know how far you can really go or last in a relationship without having any trust in your partner.
Yeah.
So,
That's a big thing. It's like if you don't have trust in your partner or you're not willing, like if let's just say they did betray you and then like you ended up giving them a second chance and like let's just say you just know in your heart you can't trust them, you
yeah.
know, then like it's never gonna work. You you can't you can't be in a relationship like that where you just don't have that trust. Like if you're gonna give it, you better give it. If you know
Yeah.
in your heart you can't, then it's just not meant to be.
Yeah, and I think that's why I also said to like, well, yeah, I think that you have to trust your gut. Like you have to really trust that if something's off, there actually is something off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just feel like that feeling would have never gone away if
Yeah.
I had stayed in that relationship. So I think like it is good that sometimes like sometimes there are truly rainbows after the storm.
Mm-hmm.
There can be good found in the bad when it comes to any relationship, whether it's traumatic or not.
Yeah,
And so that's why I'm still grateful that like it didn't work out because it really led me, I
to who
think,
you
into
are.
being, yeah, into
Yeah.
being a better, more like secure person.
Yeah.
Um, Not just in my romantic relationships, but overall, like
Like in
even when it comes
yourself.
to
Yeah.
friendships and yeah, and so yeah, I think it's come a pretty long way. I think I'm happy with how things have been, despite like what happened
Yeah. Like I definitely
at the
feel like
end
all
and how
things,
things unfolded.
yeah. I definitely feel like all things kind of, it sucks to hear in the moment, but all things kind of work out in the end. And like whatever is meant to be is meant to be. It's for the greater good of yourself. And so I do agree that you going through this breakup, like you've transformed after, I do think that you've come more into yourself and like you know what you want and you're firm in it and you have like stand like not that you didn't have standards to begin with, but I feel like you're more firm with your standards now.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just obviously you look not that you didn't look healthy, but like you look a lot healthier in
Wow.
terms of like you found your glow back, you know?
Yeah, you just have like I think there's something about people where when they really truly come to themselves and they know
Right.
like who they are, they just shine. Like they have a
Yeah.
radiance about them.
Right. And I definitely think you have that glow again. Like you have that glow, you have that spark about you where it's like, okay, yeah, she really did like pull through and look at her now. So I think it's definitely been like a blessing in disguise for you.
For sure. And I think like I really didn't come through to that. It took me, like I said, a good like half year to get over it. But then
Hmm.
once I like traveled by myself and I like was by myself, truly, like I had
Yeah.
no one with me and I went traveling and stuff like that, that really transformed my mindset and helped me come into my own sense of being and being comfortable with myself
Hmm.
too. So, for anyone who's wondering, I'm looking for advice on what you should do after a breakup. I mean, I want to do this right after. Give it
Yeah.
some time, like I said, to just really like come to with your feelings and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But go on a trip. Go on a trip by yourself and be safe, like
Yes.
to a safe place. Yes, don't
Yes.
be realistic with yourself, but yeah, like go on a trip. You will
Solo trip.
really, you
Yeah.
will love it. You will love it and you will love yourself after, I promise. Okay, and then on to the very last question of this episode. So it is, what advice would you give to someone who might be heartbroken and listening to this podcast? Right.
Ooh. I guess my biggest advice is, and it might be very hard to hear, but time, like we were saying earlier, time really does heal a lot of the wounds that come from a breakup. And I think another piece of advice I would give is to allow yourself the time to grieve and process everything and don't feel rushed to um don't feel rushed to get over your breakup like really fast. Like really take the time, like all the time that you need to, think about things and process it all because I think when you feel rushed, you can get that pressure, like especially from other people. And I just don't think it's healthy for you to feel that extra pressure and put that extra pressure on yourself, that like you're taking too long to get over a breakup. So I think those are like my biggest pieces of advice. What about you? What would your
I
advice be?
think, yeah, same thing. Unfortunately, as hard as
Mhm.
it is to hear, that time is truly going to be your best friend
Yeah.
in this really, really, really hard moment. The thing is what are you going to do with your time? That's going to be the most important piece of all of this.
Hmm.
Is finding out what you do with yourself in that time. You can really use that time to grieve if you need to, but don't spend all of it grieving. I mean, you could also use that time as well to really build yourself back up.
Hmm.
Um, and not only for yourself, but in my opinion, just to kind of like show the world and show other people that you're doing way better off. Um, and I think that a very important thing is that you should have a moment or a period of time where you are alone.
Hmm.
And not, and when I say alone, I don't mean like alone, alone truly, but just not involved in anything romantic.
Yeah.
And I only say this because I feel like a lot of times people do not enjoy their solitude enough. So take the time to really enjoy being with yourself. Um, there's this quote that I remember seeing that basically says, it mostly has to do with solo traveling, but
Hmm.
it also says, it's basically like if you, um, like basically it says if you do not like yourself, or if you don't like spending time alone,
Hmm.
then you may not really like yourself. Um, and if
I
you
could
find
see truth
yourself,
to that.
yeah, if you find
Yeah.
yourself being anxious traveling alone or being alone, then you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself being bored, um, then you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
So it ties mostly to like solo traveling. I saw this, but I also feel like it just applies to yourself and
In
life.
general,
Like
like, yeah.
you in general, like if you
Hmm.
really should get to know yourself, to trust yourself, and to like yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you're not going to have somebody there, that somebody will eventually like you for who you are, but you also have to like yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, I think you really just need to spend a lot of time romantically, like alone, and not have any romantic relations. But do spend time with the people who are going to support you and lift you up. um, that's really the best way to get through it.
Hmm.
um, I also feel, if it's easier, I also like wrote down stuff, um, to get my mind off of things. So if that's something that you like to do, I like personally wrote out a list of reasons why it didn't work out. And whenever I needed just a reminder, I would read it back to myself,
Yeah.
um, just to, really
Remind yourself.
reinstill,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
reinstill and put that back into my mind. Like, this is okay, this is why it didn't work out. You really need to ground yourself again.
Yeah.
So if that's something that also works for you. I also wrote a letter of closure, um, for and that was mostly for me.
Hmm.
It's something I did for myself. You do not necessarily have to give it to your ex.
Yeah.
I think if you want to just write it for yourself and then you want to burn it, that's totally fine. I had a wonderful burn session.
Yes, you
Um,
did.
I think that also truly was something that just
Therapeutic.
therapeutic. It lifted a weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Just like safely, burning safely, like in a controlled environment, like
Yeah.
things that I needed to let go
Sentimental.
of, like
Yeah.
things that used to be sentimental to me, like old pictures or cards and things like that. I like threw those all and burned it.
Gifts.
Wrote a letter to myself, wrote a letter of things I was wanting to let go of and burned
Yeah.
it. So if that is something that you feel would help you, I think that you should do that. I definitely felt like it helped me.
Hmm.
Just kind of like let go. But I allowed other people to also participate in this because even if they weren't going through a breakup necessarily like I was, they also
Yeah.
just wrote letters like,
Well, yeah, I think
you
everybody
know,
is going through something, and
mhm,
I think everybody can contribute to something like that because, everybody goes through their own shiz. So
mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I think people did appreciate that you like brought it up to them as well and that they
Yes.
were able to participate
And
in some way.
I I actually did this burn session twice. So I did it with two different groups of people, but
Yeah.
it helped me immensely after
Yeah.
that really start to move forward. Now there were still periods at that point in time for a few months after that where I was still like going through it,
Yeah.
but it definitely like was like a weight lifted off my shoulders.
Hmm.
Um so I encourage you, if you're somebody who likes to write letters to yourself, or you want to write a letter of closure, but don't necessarily want to give it to your ex, please don't be stupid like me. Just burn it, write it all down, burn it. Um, you'll feel so much better just doing something like that. But do what you need to do if you feel like it'll help you. That's just personal things that I did that I felt were
Hmm.
really great. And then obviously, like I said, go on a solo trip. um so yeah, it is going to take a lot of time, but I promise that
It'll be
I
worth it.
really promise that it'll be worth it. It will get
Yeah.
better. And I really hope someday that you find your glow, your radiance, and you come back to who you are.
I agree 100,000%.
All right. So that is going to conclude our relationship segment and this episode. I know it was kind of longer than our normal episodes. There was just a
Yeah.
lot to unpack, obviously. And we'll probably do a few different little segments outside of this one to go more into depth about what exactly happened with some of our breakups if you guys are
Yeah.
interested in that. So again, this was Relationships 101, Strangers Again. And we really hope that you guys enjoyed listening to this first relationship segment as much as we have enjoyed talking to you guys about it.
Yeah, so if there's anything else that you guys wanted us to talk about, we can definitely, like Izzy was saying earlier, we can bring it up in future episodes. So feel free to just let us know what you guys want to know. We do have a lot more other segments planned out for you guys, but our next one, we're planning to do a few uh, interviews with family friends to kind of
Yeah.
do in between our big segments. So
Yes, yes. So our next episode, we want you guys to tune in to meet our cousin, my best friend, our BB, our queen. She eats, she does it all. She has been there for me through everything, but is also just such an enjoyable person to be around. And okay, it's not really a she, I just call everybody she, okay? But it is our cousin John. Yay!
yay, hashtag Team Drizzy.
Yes. So John, we love him. And we really think that he's going to bring a lot of light and laughter to this show. So
Yes.
tune in for our next episode and meet John.
Until, yeah. So until then, bye,
Bye,
bitch.
bitch.